So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody from around the world, wherever you are. I am Alethea, PADA's Youth Ambassador, and I'm very glad to be the host and moderator of today's PADA Youth and IGLTA webinar, Building Bridges and Breaking Barriers. So before we begin, we have some announcements to make, some housekeeping announcements. So of course, as per usual for every PADA Youth webinar, we always ask you to introduce yourself in the chat to us so that we can really see where everybody is from, what you guys are doing right now, whether you're a student or you're a young tourism professional. We want to get to know you as you are our community. So please introduce yourself in the chat. Next up, use the Q&A function to ask questions to our speakers. You can do this throughout the webinar during the panel discussion itself, and we will get to all the questions at the end during the Q&A section. But remember to use the Q&A function and not the chat function of Zoom. Of course, certificates of participation will be sent out next week. Give us a while to process everything and do everything up nicely for you, and you will receive a certificate of participation in your email inbox next week. Lastly, this webinar recording will be made available soon, so please be patient as we send that out too. So I wanted to share with you before we begin what we are going to do today. In a while, I'll be introducing our guest speakers, and after that, we will dive straight into a panel discussion where we can learn a little bit about the unique challenges and obstacles that the LGBTQ community faces in travel, and how, as travel practitioners, what are the best practices to make travel a safe and more inclusive spaces in our different destinations. After that, we will be going into a Q&A session where we will answer any questions from the audience. And lastly, to round things up, we are going to be sharing about the Building Bridges Fellowship that PATA and IGLTA is partnering for. So that's our agenda for today. And I want to spend a moment to thank our co-hosts and supporters. Thanks to our co-hosts, we can have a successful event today, and they are CABI, PATA Nepal Student Chapter, PATA Philippines Enderun Colleges Student Chapter, PATA Far Eastern University Student Chapter, PATA Philippines LPU-Manila Student Chapter, and last but not least, PATA Singapore Institute of Technology Student Chapter. So thank you very much to our co-hosts for supporting this event. Now, I'm going to introduce our guest speakers for today. So first up, we have LoAnn Halden, who is the Vice President Communications for the International LGBTQ+ Travel Association. Hi, LoAnn. She is the global leader in advancing LGBTQ+ for travel, and IGLTA's mission is to provide information and resources for LGBTQ+ travelers and expand LGBTQ+ tourism globally by demonstrating its significant social and economic impact. LoAnn frequently speaks about LGBTQ+ tourism and has participated in travel sessions for consumers and trade on 5 continents, including WTM Africa, Barcelona LGBTI Tourism Summit, New York Times Travel Show, G Network 360 in Buenos Aires, and LGBT+ Travel Symposium Thailand. So prior to IGLTA, she spent 14 years writing for LGBTQ+ publications. She lives in Florida and London. Thank you very much, LoAnn, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. We are so proud of our partnership between IGLTA and PATA, so it's great to be here.
So glad to have you with us. Next up, we have Amine Gabbouj, who is a young, motivated student at the Higher International Institute of Tourism in Tangier, Morocco. During his academic years, he developed a huge interest in social work. Considering LGBTQ+ tourism as an important lever on economic and social level, working with IGLTA will be for him the opportunity to expand his visions about this type of tourism. He strongly believes in equality for all and is currently working on a master thesis under the theme Racial, Gender, and Sexual Orientation Equality in the Tourism Sector. He's currently based in Morocco and cannot wait to start traveling again.
Hi everyone, greeting from Morocco. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
Last but not least, we have Bella Vongvisitsin. She is a tourism development scholar and transgender rights advocate. She's currently the co-founder and CEO of Inclusive Tourism Asia Limited and a PhD candidate at the School of Hotel and Tourism Management, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. In her research and professional career, she is passionate about community participation in planning and development. Bella's expertise is related to community-based tourism, diversity and inclusion, destination management, organizational development. She contributes to LGBTIQ rights through regional and national platforms by serving as president of IGLTA Foundation and chair of Transpiration Power. Bella, you want to unmute yourself and say a few words to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Greeting from Hong Kong, and I'm very glad to be here. And also, this month is a Pride Month, so happy Pride Month to everyone.
Yes, happy Pride Month to everyone. So thank you to all my guest speakers for joining us today on our virtual stage. Let's kick off the panel discussion for real and really dive into the topic at hand today. So, travel has always brought a unique set of issues for the LGBTQ plus community. And for example, safety, the issue of safety, whether or not this community can expect an authentic welcome, if they will face any difficulties in hyper surveillance spaces like airport security, checkpoints, and more. So LoAnn, I wanted to ask you, since you have so much experience over the years with this community and in the travel industry. So now that there's so much more awareness of this issue, and the world is so much more connected now thanks to the internet, and we're able to speak to each other. We have finally learned this language that has enabled us and empowered us to be able to communicate to each other on activism issues and equal rights to travel and etc. etc. I wanted to ask you, how has the issue of equal rights and safety for LGBTQ travelers changed over the years?
Sure. I mean, I think the answer to this question is it's changed dramatically, and in some ways it hasn't changed at all. I mean, and this is the thing that we have to think about, and as we talk about all of this today, because the modern LGBTQ plus rights movement is really only about 50 years old. So if you think in terms of progress about how much we've grown in terms of acceptance and visibility over what's been a really short period of time, it's been quite incredible. You know, we're in so many parts of the world, we're no longer in hiding. We are out and we are proud, and we're very much an integrated part of the community. However, there are still 70 plus countries that criminalize our relationships. And it's also not just about the laws themselves. That's not the only determining factor in what makes someone feel safe where they are. There's also cultural reasons, there's family reasons. So just because a law changes in a country, that doesn't mean that suddenly everyone feels safe. So what I would say has really improved, and like you said, because of the internet and being able to have more options, there are just so many more ways to go online and to find support groups. And that is one of the things that IGLTA does, is we provide a number of travel guides. And if you go to our online travel guides, there's one that is specifically dedicated to safety issues. And there's also a guide that's specifically dedicated to transgender safety in travel, because that's a different set of issues. And we can't lump LGBTQ plus all into one category. So that's also an important thing to think about. Whereas the rights for, say, the G might have improved, in the increments of improvement across the entire spectrum of that alphabet are not the same. And as you move forward, and then sometimes you take steps back. And even in places like in the US, where things are seemingly more progressive on some levels, we're currently experiencing a real pushback against transgender rights in the United States. So it's an ongoing conversation, it's an ongoing dialogue. And I don't want anyone out there to feel alone in where they are. because we are all better connected, and there are resources out there now where even if your own individual community doesn't have an in-person way for you to feel safe congregating or developing as an LGBTQ plus person, there are still resources, like IGLTA and like the organization that Bella has started that can help you behind the scenes.
Thank you so much for that answer, because I think I want to highlight two things that were really important to me. First, that it's not a completely straight path. Sometimes it's getting better, and sometimes we take one step back. So there's always work to be done in different communities. And safety is different for everybody, because within the community, there's so much diversity within the community itself, and we need to acknowledge that as well. So those were the 2 points in your answer that really, really resonated with me, and I think it's super important to highlight that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask the two youths that we have with us, Bella and Amine. So we are, as LoAnn has just pointed out, we are aware that the issue of safety is cross-sectional, right? So within the community, it's so diverse. So cross-sectional factors that impact someone's safety would be gender, race, nationality, economic status as well, and visibility, disability. So we know that no one person can really speak for the entire community. So we wanted to ask you, from your perspective, from your point of view, what are some examples of discrimination or some examples of challenges and obstacles that the LGBTQ plus community faces when traveling? And could you share these challenges with us?
Sure. Shall I start first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
All right.
After Bella, Amine.
All right. I think I want to support the statement that LoAnn just made, is that LGBTIQ communities are quite, very diverse, right? And then we have probably like separate issues related to sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, or sexual characteristic, right? So once we said that LGBTIQ is like one big group, sometimes we couldn't identify what are the problems that we are facing, right? So I would like to say that if we can kind of understand the issues related to their, different dimensions related to sexuality and gender identities would be more comprehensive. And I think from that statement, I would like to share some of my personal experiences. For example, I identify myself as a transgender woman. I'm originally from Thailand, but right now I'm in Hong Kong. And then I would like to say that the issues related to gender identities are usually experienced by transgender communities and also non-binary people as well. Transgender communities, it means that someone who was assigned as one sex at birth, but they live as another gender that they prefer, right? So this is transgender people. But for non-binary people, only for some people that might not be familiar with, is that they don't fall into either male or female category. So somehow maybe their expression or then their gender presentation probably not consistent with their legal documents or how other people perceive them, right? So most of the common issues related to safety and security always happen to transgender and non-binary people, because our legal documents sometimes couldn't correspond with our gender presentation that we have, especially for the developing countries like in Thailand, or even in some countries that they have already gender recognition in some ways, that transgender people might change their gender marker on the ID, but most of the cases they can change only that they have already done the operation, sex change operation, right? But I would say that not everyone afford that surgery, or maybe they have some other challenges like medical reasons or financial reasons or anything, right? So not everyone go through that process the same. So many people are still experiencing a lot of discrimination related to the legal gender. And especially if I would like to give example, for example, when we go on board, when we buy the tickets, when we book the tickets to from the airplanes or the trains or the bus, anything that we need to check the security of the person, right? We need to see the legal document and also the person in front of you and then see each other. For example, for myself, I came from Thailand and we still don't have the gender recognition law. So actually my legal document still identify myself as male, even though my presentation is already female, right? So I have so much, how to say, like traumatized experiences, like when I go through the security check or immigration, or when I applying for the visa, or when I need to renew my passport, or when I need to go through like, you know, sex segregated facilities. Like, for example, like there are many public space or many public facility that they still segregate people between male and female. For example, toilets or maybe some spa or massage place or something, right? Because that is quite sensitive to, in related to gender as well. And also another point that I would like to make is about language, because in English, for example, we have the binary sex segregated language that we have used is that pronouns, for example, whether we identify ourselves as women, so we would like to be addressed as she or her, for example. But sometimes when people are not familiar with this kind of sensitivity, they might refer to your legal gender. That is probably not true when you present yourself to another person, right? So sometimes whenever we need to present the legal document, for example, like hotel check-in, or when we need to book the ticket, as I said, we need to try to, you know, explain who we are all the time, like, you know, along the process, and then make them understand that, oh, okay, maybe my legal gender is another gender, but, you know, my gender appearance is another thing. So those are the issues that always brought into so much sensitivity throughout my travel experiences.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences with us and being very honest and candid about it and the struggles. And I'm sorry that it was a traumatizing experience as well. So in our next question, we are going to be tackling some best practices and how we can try to make these spaces that you've just described and these experiences that you've just described less traumatic, more inclusive, more welcoming for a diverse community that does exist and we want to acknowledge exists as well. So we will tackle all those best practices in the next question, but I do want to give Amine an opportunity to share as well his thoughts on the challenges that the community faces as well. So thank you so much, Bella, for that answer.
Thanks so much, Bella and LoAnn. Well, I mostly agree with what LoAnn and Bella said, that the LGBTQ plus community faces challenges while traveling, but I also join them from my point of view. I think that transgender people are the one who face more discrimination while traveling, because, for example, you can never tell one sexual orientation just by looking at the person. However, for transgender people, it's more difficult when it comes to legal document for traveling. Now, we all feel anxious when we are at a security checkpoint, for example, at the airport. Well, just imagine that the anxiety and the fear is multiplied for transgender people, and I'm sure, yeah, Bella just talked about that. Having a passport that doesn't reflect who you really are can be really challenging. So the lack of representation and biocultural support, in addition to gender segregation, denies sovereignty for trans bodies and place them in a position of high social vulnerability. However, of course, I'm not saying that traveling for the rest of the community is easy. I mean, the rest of the LGBTQ plus community face a lot of challenges as well, especially in countries where it's not okay to be LGBTQ plus. For example, a lot of friends of mine got a lot of refusal in hotels when they asked for a double bed, for example, rather than a twin bed. Because in countries like mine, if you are two people with the same sex, you cannot sleep in the same bed. So in addition to that, people make a lot of assumptions about the LGBTQ plus community. So before traveling, many people from the community have to think twice about these assumptions that might increase the risk of discrimination, harassment, violence, which put them in a place where they should change their behavior accordingly to the country that they are visiting in order to be safe.
Sorry, I'm just writing it down.
No worries.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much for sharing, and especially for pointing out that assumption that people make when you are two people of the same gender. What type of room and what type of beds do they automatically give just based on that assumption alone? Okay.
It has happened to everyone who has traveled as a couple. It happened to me in Sri Lanka. We had a really great tour operator and everything was booked in, and we arrived really late at night, and the night manager took one look at us and decided, oh, these two women should be in separate beds. So when we got into the room, not realizing that he'd made this decision at 2 a.m., oh, great, the first night of our holiday, and we're in separate beds. But, you know, that's also a minor point compared, again, to the stress and trauma of violence and discrimination and fear that a lot of people go through, particularly non-binary and transgender travelers, because my wife and I look cisgender and they might think, oh, they're sisters, or they're just friends, so we'll put them in two beds, versus making a discriminatory based assumption on orientation.
And thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your experiences, your thoughts. Some comments already in the chat, and everyone's just like, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't what we want our travel industry to stand for. We want our travel industry to be welcoming. We want it to be inclusive. We want it to be reflective of the fact that as a human race, we are diverse. So I think now is a really good time to jump into best practices. So I want to ask my guest speakers, my expert guest speakers, what can we do to make destinations or places safer, friendlier, more inclusive to the LGBTQ+ community? What are some best practices for businesses in the industry? So this could be for hospitality, this could be for tour operators, this could be for spas, for example. Anyone who has a stake in the tourism industry and will interact with tourists from overseas, etc., etc. What are those best practices to make these spaces safer and friendlier and more inclusive?
I think it's really important to look within, because so much of what happens with LGBTQ+ marketing and outreach is about, let's see how we can attract more business and make money. But in reality, if you're going to authentically and safely welcome LGBTQ+ travelers, you need to have infrastructure in place to do so in a genuine way. So you have to look from within. You have to consider diversity training programs for your staff. And that's a big one. And if you are working for a hotel, I mean, that's a way that even as an ally, you can approach someone and it doesn't become an overly overt question, but you can just say, hey, I think it would be a really good idea if there were diversity training offered for the team so that we all know how to better welcome guests from all cultures. So it can be about race, ethnicity, orientation. It's across the spectrum of making everyone feel more welcome. And then you're not presenting it in a way that outs you or puts that rainbow flag on your statement. You're really just talking about inclusivity and hospitality, because what is hospitality? It really is about welcoming people, and that should be the bottom line. And I think the other thing that's really important is to engage with LGBTQ+ networks within your community, or as we said before, online, because you really need to understand your own community and get the voices on the ground, understand the challenges that they're going through. Because the best people to tell you how to welcome LGBTQ+ people are LGBTQ+ people.
Yes. Know your community, know what they want, know what they need, ask them directly. Yes, 100% yes. Wait, sorry, one follow-up question before we go on to Bella and then maybe Amine. One follow-up question, you said there is specific infrastructure needed to authentically welcome LGBTQ travelers. Is diversity training an example of that infrastructure, or could you give us more examples of that infrastructure that you're referring to? What is this?
Yeah, no, I do think that diversity training is an important part of that. And then from the diversity training, there are other aspects that come out of that, as in how you're presenting your business in terms of inclusivity in imagery, in terms of using non-gendered language. So it's a snowball effect from there. But again, it has to start internally. There has to be an awareness within the business that they want to authentically welcome LGBTQ plus people before you can sort of go on to step 6, 7, 8, 9, 20.
Okay, Ken, thank you very much for that clarification. Bella, could you share with us some best practices for businesses?
Yeah, sure. I think, we all have the good intention to make, our business to welcome everyone, especially when we realize the importance of the market, especially the LGBTQ market, that is more lucrative and also we see it as well, right? But the thing is that once we really want to make it authentically inclusive, I think we need to start with the organizational leaders' vision as well. This is one of the first steps that I would like to highlight, is that we need to have the vision, right? So after that, I would say that all the strategies that are imposed by the organization will be following to that vision, right? So I would say that I can separate into two. First is the hard approach. The second one is the soft approach that we can do. One of the things that I would like to add on, LoAnn, is that one of the infrastructure that we can make sure that everyone have the channel to voice out their needs or concern is that we need to set the policies in the organizational level. For example, whether the whole recruitment process of the staff or the promotion or appraisal of process of the employees or everything, right? Or even the discrimination within the organization. We need to have the policies in place. Like, several organizations impose something like equal opportunity policy or, or anti-discrimination policy or, zero tolerance policy. These kind of examples, they have been, happen in many organizations that they're doing LGBTQ inclusion. And also another thing is the soft approach, right? Once we already have the training in place, also we need to communicate with everyone. LGBTQ issue is not just only the issue for, LGBTQ people only, but, at the end, it affects the whole environment of working. Like, no matter you are LGBTQ or you're not LGBTQ, at the end you work together, right? So I would say that one of the key important thing that we need to highlight is about the internal communication, that we need to make sure that the idea of diversity and inclusion, especially LGBTQ dimensions, need to be mainstream across the organization. It's not only about human resource management only, but it's also related to other departments. And also, I think one of the key players that can push forward these strategies is the mid-level manager, because they are somehow the connection between the top management and the operational staff, right? So they are the person who are kind of like the gatekeepers in order to make sure that this kind of environment is inclusive to everyone. So I think that would be one of the suggestions that I would like to make.
Thank you so much for that suggestion. I think it's super important as well to make sure that the inner workings of your organization also reflect the fact that you want to attract LGBTQ customers. It needs to match. Amine, what do you have for us in terms of best practices for businesses within the travel and tourism industry?
I'm sure LoAnn and Bella covered it all, but of course I agree with them when they said that businesses and tourism professionals in general should understand the needs of the LGBTQ plus community while traveling. Well, that can be achievable doing too many stuff, like looking for research about the LGBTQ plus trends, conducting surveys, etc. The second thing that we need to know and we need to do is to train our staff and the people who work in the tourism industry, because of course, not everybody has an idea about the struggle of the LGBTQ plus community because they're coming from a traditional background, especially in countries like mine. So we need to make sure that our staff is trained to welcome people from the LGBTQ plus community and to accept their differences. The third thing is to have more inclusive policies to stand with the LGBTQ plus community. And in order to reach that, the first step and the most important step is not to make any exception, especially in promotion and marketing campaigns, etc. And the last thing, and I think it's the most important thing, is to let the LGBTQ plus community know that we are welcoming them authentically, not for profit. And they can be done in many ways. What the community needs to know is that they will be safe during their trip. And as a business, we should provide them security and safety, of course, during their travel. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think one thing to highlight is that we have been very general in terms of our in terms of the best practices that you guys have suggested, but these best practices apply across the entire industry to all sectors, not just hospitality. Also, if you are an airport, if you're running an airport, your airport security staff can also go through diversity training and should go through diversity training, etc., etc. So it's the best practices that we said today, while they are a little bit general and not specified, it really does apply to every single sector of the tourism industry. As long as you consider yourself part of this industry, this is something that you can do to align. Okay, so now I want to ask an important question. How can we safely be advocates for LGBTQ plus issues in tourism, also in our everyday lives? I think LoAnn has already kind of mentioned this already, you can be an ally by just simply suggesting diversity training to the organization that you work at. Diversity training doesn't just apply to LGBTQ plus community, it applies to race, to religion, etc., etc. So how else can we safely be advocates for this issue?
Well, there are other organizations out there too that you can look into, like, for example, PFLAG, because that's built around parents and families supporting lesbian and gay people. So there's networks like that that are specifically speaking to allies. And I know that PFLAG in China has been particularly active. And there have even been pre-pandemic PFLAG cruises that brought together all different families as a means of support, so, which is an incredible thing. So I think, getting involved through those ally networks can be a key way of entering in a safe way.
I immediately want to go for that cruise. Amine, Bella, anything else to add?
Well, if Bella, do you want to go first or should I go?
You can go first. It's fine.
Okay. Well, the first thing that we should do, to be honest, is raise awareness. That's the most important thing, because we must know that people in countries that are not LGBTQ plus friendly are raised in a very close-minded way. For them, the natural and only way is to have people from different sexes. And when I say sexes, I refer to the biological sex, the one we were born with. So for them, only a male and a female can be in a relationship. But we need to educate these people that same-sex people can also have a relationship as well, because love would never hurt anyone. And I truly believe that big changes start with small steps. I mean, small actions can change the perception of people who are against LGBTQ plus community. For example, we all spend too many hours on social media. So we can use these tools, for example, to educate our close environment that there is absolutely nothing wrong with being an LGBTQ plus people. I know it's really difficult and challenging, but it's really worth the try.
Thank you very much. Bella.
Yeah, all right. I think to be advocate for LGBTQ issues, right, I think we can start from ourselves. I mean, apart from looking for supporting other people, right, we can also start from ourselves. One of the things that we can do is that we need to unlearn our assumptions, because, there are so many assumptions that we have, grown up with together, like, in different culture as well, right? Like, how male or female should behave, or how we need to, follow the pattern of life that probably different from in different culture, right? So I think once we want to, make our society to be more inclusive, we need to unlearn those assumptions and then try to listen to them with empathy, and no need to put the judgmental questions or the statement to them, but also you can also practice deep listening. In order to make it more inclusive, we need to understand the needs that are exclusive to everyone. In order to understand the diversity of the needs that we have, that probably we have so much different unique concerns in our life, right? So at the end, once we already start from ourselves, we don't put assumptions, we can build more inclusive society. And also I want to let everyone know that LGBTQ issue is not just only for LGBTQ people, but it also has still spillover effects to your friends, to your family, or your two colleagues as well. Or maybe you probably have the employers or your boss who identify themselves as LGBTQ, right? So at the end, it affects everyone. So I would like to address in that way.
Yeah, thank you very much for highlighting that as well. I think it is important that we all acknowledge the fact that it affects everyone, that we're all part of the same world community. Yes, and there really is no division these days, especially with how global the communities are, thanks to the internet, thanks to how accessible travel is, and we all affect each other. So just to highlight from the answers that we have for this question, which is basically how can we safely be advocates, it's look for communities that already exist that you can tap on, such as PFLAG, and look for those resources as well that you can use to educate yourself. Raise awareness. So definitely do your part to raise awareness and to educate the people around you, as well as start from yourself by unlearning the assumptions that you are socialized to have. It is not your fault that you are socialized, but it is your responsibility to undo those assumptions. And listen with empathy to the voices from the community that are telling you things. Okay, so thank you very much. We have one last question. Let me check the time. Okay, so we have one last question before we're going to go into Q&A. So I see that we already have quite a lot of good questions in our Q&A chat boxes already. So please, if you have any questions for our guest speakers, ask it in our Q&A chat box. The last question is specifically to Bella and to Amine. What would you like to see fellow youths take concrete action on? So this is kind of like a overlap of the previous question, but if you have any case studies that you would like to share of youth-led advocacy within the tourism industry, could you please share them with us? I think, Bella, why don't you go first, and then Amine can wrap it up.
Oh, all right. Okay. I think your question about youth advocate, right? I think this is very important because our hope goes to young generation nowadays as well, and also they are the one who probably can make the change to the world, especially the society that they want to live in the future. I think that is very, very important as well. And I think there are so many LGBTQ dynamics in everywhere around the world. And we need to understand that LGBTQ issues are not geographically bounded. So no matter you are in Asia, you are in Africa, or you are in anywhere of the world, LGBTQ issues exist, right? So no matter someone claim that LGBTQ concept is the Western concept, actually it's not true, because in Asia we also have, okay, I'm from east part of Asia, right? So through our history or through our culture of Asia, we also have LGBTQ characters, appear from time to time, right? So actually it exists everywhere. For example, right now, if I want to refer to the current situation, Japan is hosting Olympics games this year, right? So they come up with so many, a series of LGBTQ campaigns that make sure that the destination is friendly to athletes that not just only about only LGBTQ but also non-LGBTQ as well. Or even in Hong Kong next year we're gonna have gay games that is the specialized kind of like Olympics game for LGBTQ athletes. So we are working very hard on sensitizing the whole process from the immigration and, to attending the events and socializing in Hong Kong. So we need to make sure that, everyone feels safe and, everyone is friendly and also inclusive to LGBTQ people. And I think there are so many LGBTQ creative dynamics in Taiwan or China or in Singapore as well. And yeah, so I couldn't deny that I need to give some example from my home country, for example, Thailand, right? So Thailand is quite unique context actually, because, we kind of like one of the most welcoming and accepting destination to LGBTQ people. But one thing that I would like to address is that, okay, we see the potential of Thailand to be LGBTQ friendly destination, but sometimes we need to educate ourselves. So what are the local LGBTQ people experience in daily life? Because, what we perceive the image of the destination probably not consistent with the local people experience, right? So right now, Thailand has no gender recognition bill, or we don't have same-sex marriage bill, but, somehow we still promote LGBTQ people to travel, and also, especially like, you can get married in Thailand, you can do honeymoon trip in Thailand, but at the end, we couldn't take care of our own people in that way, right? So that is one thing that we need to try to familiarize ourselves with the issues, and also, to be sure that, whether it's authentic or not to the LGBTQ people. Yeah, that would be something that I would like to share.
Thank you so much. I really like the optimism, and I'm okay. So I'm really excited to hear Amin's answer. Amine, could you share with us as well? What would you like to see fellow youths take concrete action on? Do you have any case studies to share with us?
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks, Bella, for that, because what I would add is we need to take actions to raise awareness on the LGBTQ plus inclusion, not only in tourism or in other industries, of course, but it's a daily life concern. Even though it can seem really difficult and challenging in countries like mine, where the subject is still considered as a taboo, but it's really worth the try. Therefore, I am really grateful for IGLTA for giving me an opportunity to raise my voice and make a difference. We are here to let every person from the community know that they're not alone. And I think it's really important for international organizations to follow the IGLTA path and include more young people from countries who are not LGBTQ plus friendly. There are a lot of people like me who want to see things change in a better way. So as for my experience with IGLTA, for example, it made me more courageous and made me want to take more actions to fight for our community and in countries like mine. So yeah, we stand together.
Thank you so much for that answer. So, okay, we have many questions in our Q&A chat box. I want to dive in straight to some of them. Maybe LoAnn, you could do us a favor and answer this question. It's coming from a DMC perspective. So what kind of tours, what kind of holiday packages are suitable? Can you provide some tips that we can learn to serve the LGBTQ community better as a tour operator? So I think earlier in the discussion, we did talk a lot about hospitality, aviation, but we haven't really talked a little bit about tour operators and DMCs. Could you share with us some tips, best practices?
Sure. So one of the things that we've seen work really successfully within our network of tour operators is that they're not focusing on creating all LGBTQ plus experiences. We certainly have tour operator members that are doing that and doing that quite successfully, but that's a very small niche. When you look at the global spectrum of tour operators, the most important thing is for them, again, to go back and get education and understand the community. But also, this is a great way to get engagement and to employ LGBTQ plus people. So, identifying LGBTQ plus tour guides, identifying businesses that are already welcoming to the community within their network and incorporating those things into their tours. That's a part of it. But also it goes back to the beginning, you know, for a tour operator from the very beginning, one of the first things that they need to do is sort of look at their overall infrastructure and how are they marketing? Because people who don't see themselves represented are not going to feel included. So when they're putting together their offerings, you know, are they speaking in gender neutral language? Are they, you know, presenting things in a way that makes it sound like they're just talking to cisgender people? Or are they presenting things in a way, and it doesn't have to be building a, you know, a microsite that's all rainbow flags. It can be very, very simple. If you're looking at a website and you see a photo that clearly includes a non-binary person, that speaks volumes. So it's about the image you're projecting outward, and it's about doing that homework inward so that you can create that element of safety. So it can start with very, very, very small steps. And there are a lot of resources out there that we've talked about today, but also, you know, IGLTA is always here for the global community. That's what we do. We're here to provide resources. If there's anyone listening who just has a question or they want to talk through things, that's what we're here for. And they can just drop a note to IGLTA@IGLTA.org at any time, and we're there to answer it for them.
I'm so glad you said that, because we have so many questions that are just really, really, really simply like, how? They're just like, it's like people who want to take the first step, are ready to take the first step, and are just a little bit unsure of how to take the first step. I think really the first, as LoAnn has said, doing that homework internally, looking up resources, starting to join networks such as IGLTA's network, trying to listen and listen with empathy. All these things are very easy first steps that we can all take together to then make this industry a more diverse and inclusive industry. So
you know what? They showed up for the webinar today, so they've taken the first step.
Thank you for showing up for the webinar, everybody. Okay, so we have another question. This is a little bit more for the traveler's perspective. What is the best way to protect ourselves from sexual harassment or discrimination when traveling? So I think this person is part of the LGBT community and is asking how's the best way to feel safe?
Well, I think Bella and I might have different answers to that question, because again, it's a perspective thing, right? So, you know, as a lesbian, for me, I mean, I often say I'm really traveling as a woman first. So in places and situations where I would not feel safe as a woman, I mean, that also crosses over to, you know, safety as a lesbian. So it's really about doing your homework. You know, I don't, I love travel. It's obviously it's my career, but I still look at every destination that I'm visiting through a lens of gender, through a lens of orientation. And I really map things out in a way in advance so that I can have the best possible experience. And the important thing is to remember that you can't live in a bubble. There's no way to eliminate it completely. Things can happen anywhere in the world. It could happen, you know, in London just as easily as it could happen, you know, in Marrakesh. So you just have to take a certain leap of faith, because travel is worth it. And I do firmly believe that ultimately all of the good and beautiful and wonderful experiences in the world do outweigh the challenges. But being an informed traveler ultimately is what makes it better.
So thank you very much for that. Bella, do you want to add to that answer?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can add on for transgender travelers as well. As I mentioned before, that we have a lot of, you know, discrimination experiences through the security check or, you know, the immigration process, right? So I think what we can do is that usually they just want to, you know, check whether you are, you know, a secure person or not in order to enter the border, right? So the thing that we can do is that if your legal document is not consistent with your gender representation, probably you can prepare a little bit more supplement documents in order to show that you have planned your trips in advance. Like as what LoAnn said, that you need to do homework before, right? So once you can, guarantee yourself that you are safe, I mean, as an individual, it's not just only about gender as only, right? But you need to prepare your trip. You have booked the tickets, everything all done, or you have bought the insurance. You have prepared, the emergency contacts. Once we have any difficult situation that you can contact, for example, your embassies when you go abroad, because no one will understand you if you are not the local people understand each other, right? Especially if you go to the hostile place, you need to contact your embassies, right? If anything happened, right? And also, yeah, I think everywhere we need to do homework, and then we need to see that what attractions that are safe for transgender people, or whether they have any sex segregated facilities, and then we need to make a decision, right? Whether we want to put ourselves into those kind of risky situation or not. So I wouldn't say that everywhere is safe for transgender people, but I think we can try to do homework and then also make sure that we are safe during the travel process.
I never expected homework to now be a keyword in our webinar, but here it is. Amine, I have a different question for you. This is from an anonymous question asker, coming from a Middle Eastern background, coming from the region that you are in, which is less LGBTQ friendly. How do you advocate to that community?
Coming from a Middle Eastern background or an Arabic background in general, it's really, really difficult to talk about the subject in the first place. However, it's worth the try. We can still educate people. We can tell them that it's totally okay to be LGBTQ+ as long as no one is harming anyone. So it takes small steps to reach the big changes. And we have social media nowadays. We have a lot of tools that can help us educate our close environment. So we need to take action. That's the most important thing. If we don't do anything, we won't reach anything. So we really need to take action and start educating people and raising awareness about the subject.
Thank you very much for that answer. So we actually have run out of time for the Q&A section. Bella, I see that you're typing an answer. Keep doing that. If anyone else on the answer in the Q&A box, please feel free to do so. But first we want to talk about the Building Bridges Fellowship. So Kun Om, could I have the slides back up, please? We want to share with you an opportunity that PATA and IGLTA have partnered on. It is called the Building Bridges Fellowship. LoAnn, could you tell us a little bit about this fellowship and what are the goals of the Building Bridges Fellowship?
Sure. Well, as we mentioned at the beginning, IGLTA is about creating information and resources to advance LGBTQ+ travel globally. But we also have a nonprofit foundation, and its role is really to empower LGBTQ+ welcoming businesses globally through leadership, education, and research. And one of the key initiatives within the foundation is the Building Bridges Fellowship Program. And we partnered with PATA on that in 2017. We've had recipients from China, from Thailand by way of Hong Kong, Bella, who's with us today, and Nepal to date. We would have had a recipient from Japan, but alas, COVID. So we're really hoping that we can move forward, and even if it's not in person, from a virtual standpoint, we really want to encourage applications from PATA young professionals for this opportunity for 2021. Because what we're really doing here, the idea is that by providing mentorship and bringing a young professional to the IGLTA Global Convention and allowing them to interact with tourism thought leaders from around the world, all of whom are committed to creating a more welcoming landscape and more inclusive tourism, that will then inspire them for the future. Because everyone who's listening here today that goes on to have a career in hospitality is a future ally, is someone who can be in that management position that says we're going to have training, who is going to take a lead. And so we want to plant those seeds now and inspire someone out there listening to fill out that application and join us through the IGLTA Foundation to learn more and contribute to building that welcoming landscape for everyone.
I love it. I love it. So this is one of my favorite partnerships to support. I think it's so meaningful, the work that you do. And I am so excited for that one Para youth out there who will be sponsored to go to the convention and meet all these thought leaders and industry leaders who are dedicated to creating a more diverse, more inclusive tourism industry. Bella, as someone who has received the fellowship, recipient, you are a recipient, you've gone to the convention. Can you tell us about your experience at the convention and how did it help you? How did it change your perspective? Tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, if everyone see the slide right now, you can see myself actually in the picture that I dress in a Japanese traditional costume. But anyway, I'm originally from Thailand and I flew from Hong Kong, but I wear the Japanese costume, right? So it's quite international actually. And I would like to say that I was very impressed with the convention because I learned a lot. And one of the most important thing that I got from the convention is the inspiration actually, because okay, maybe the convention probably can give you a lot of information, right? But inspiration for everyone is different. So for me, I come back to Hong Kong and I, gather my colleagues in Hong Kong Polytechnic University to do our research campaign together. And then, somehow I can have the information sources that what we can do more in our own country, right? So this is what I learned from the convention. And of course, as you can see, I wear the Japanese costume in the picture. I got a mentor from Japan and she's kind of like, teach me the way that how I need to connect with people and introduce me to everyone in the convention. So I don't need to feel like lonely, even I went alone. So with the mentor, she helps a lot as well. And then, even dress myself with the traditional costume, that was very impressive for myself. And also, get to travel, right? So the next convention will be in Atlanta. So I think it would be the good chance, especially during the COVID or, after the COVID, I will, recover soon. We can have a chance to travel to the US. So I think that is one of the most impressive part for the recipient of the scholarship. So I would encourage you to apply. I think this is another first step as well, apart from attending the webinar. So next step would be applying for the scholarship.
And I really love what you said about your mentor, that she actively brought you around and introduced you to people. So tourism leaders and industry working professionals out there, please listen up. That is exactly how you mentor someone who is a youth. That is exactly how you open up doors and welcome them into the community and include them in your network. Thank you very much for highlighting that, Bella. So once again, this is the link. We've dropped it into the chat below. This is the Building Bridges Fellowship. The deadline to apply is 15 June. So you have approximately 2 weeks to think about it and to apply. And we highly encourage you to do so, to take the next step and get connected with the IGLTA network within the convention. LoAnn, Amine, for two people who work for the organization, any last words about the convention or the fellowship or your experience working at IGLTA?
I would only add that this is the first step, and the second step will definitely be the convention because it's so educational. And if you are really interested and you want to be part of the change, we will send the link of the convention. Make sure you register and hopefully we will see you there with us.
I'm just so proud of Amine, who just took that step to reach out. You know, here's someone who's sitting in Morocco, and we've talked about how challenging that is in North Africa. And he wrote us a beautiful letter and said, you know, is there some way that I could be an intern for you? And now he is. So it just goes to show how nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I really look forward to meeting at least one of you in person in Atlanta. But hopefully you'll continue to engage with us through the years, because there's so many opportunities with IGLTA, and it's really important that we all work together to create a more diverse and inclusive tourism world.
100%, yes. Okay, so thank you very much. I have one last announcement to make before I can wrap things up, and that is our PATA internship program recruitment drive for July 2021 starts today. So we are recruiting interns. If you are interested in working with an international organization in the travel and tourism industry, please look at our website where we have more information on job descriptions and frequently asked questions, and you can send in your application today. So the recruitment drive is open. We are hiring interns for several departments from July till September and from October to December of 2021. So I look forward to seeing your applications as well. The deadline for that, I've copied IGLTA. It is also 15 June, so you have 2 weeks to apply to be an intern. And I think it makes it easier for the community. 15 June is the deadline day. That's it, guys. Next slide, please. We have, of course, all of this can't be possible, and all of this won't be possible if we didn't have the PATA Youth platform and program that PATA supports in our commitment to developing human capacity within the travel and tourism industry. So if you are not yet a PATA Youth member, do know that you have to be a PATA Youth member in order to apply for the IGLTA Building Bridges Fellowship. So please join us. It is free for students. The link is in the chat and on your screen, www.pada.org/youth. So yes, please join the international community. And next slide, please. Thank you very much to our co-hosts who have supported us in this event. It's thanks to them that we have a successful event today. So thank you very much, CABI. Thank you very much, PATA Nepal Student Chapter, PATA Philippines Enderun Colleges Student Chapter, PATA Philippines Far Eastern University Student Chapter, PATA Philippines LPU-Manila Student Chapter, and last but not least, PATA Singapore Institute of Technology Student Chapter. So thank you very much to our co-hosts who have supported us today. We couldn't have done this without you, and we're very, very grateful for your support. If you have any questions about the internship, the Building Bridges Fellowship, or the PATA Youth Program, or PATA in general, if you just have questions about life, please feel free to email me. My email is ytp@pada.org. We are happy to engage with the community. We always look forward to future collaborations with people. And I see a question in the chat. Am I a student? Can I join? Yes, you can. You can join the PATA Youth community at www.pada.org/youth. It is free for students. And we are officially out of time. So thank you everyone who attended this webinar. I see you. I see each and every one of you in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking the first step forward in learning and educating yourself so that you can continue moving forward as an advocate for the LGBTQ community. Thank you to my guest speakers for being so open and so candid and so kind to share your knowledge and to share your experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us as well. And thank you for the audience.
Thank you. Take care and be safe out there, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Pride Month.
Be safe. Bye-bye. Have a
Bye-bye.
good day.